So getting kind of right into like, breaking down some songs with you, I wanted to bring up this album here, The Soul Cages, which was the first record you worked on with Sting back in 1991. And I wanted to talk about the title track, which is like, it might be my favorite like solo Sting song.
Yes.
It's
I agree.
It's like I learned how to play it on guitar recently, and it's so fun. Like it's just a great riff song, and it's really interesting because it's like, it doesn't. It's a bit unconventional in a lot of ways. It changes keys twice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really follow like a verse chorus pattern. It's almost like each section is like its own little movement. So what was it like putting that track together?
I'm really glad that you mentioned that track, because I've been trying to persuade Sting to play that live for a long time, but he seems to have a block with that song to play in concert. I loved doing that song. Actually, I can tell you that the direct influence of that riff, that style of, I was thinking about Eddie Van Halen, the way he plays rhythm.
Right.
And there was a song on one of his albums during the Sammy Hagar days called "When It's Love."
Right.
Are you familiar with
Oh,
that
yeah.
song? It's
I love the Sammy Hagar era.
That kind of mid-tempo rock.
Yeah, the
kind of feel.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, I was kind of putting myself in Eddie Van Halen's sort of head, because I've always rated him as one of the greatest rhythm guitar players anywhere.
Yeah.
And because most of people think of Eddie Van Halen as sort of a
Tapping
shredder,
but
he was an impeccable rhythm guitarist. And so I was kind of trying to do something like that, because Sting had the chord changes, and I remember I was kind of almost joking, sort of like, let's do something rock here. And Sting was like, he was amused by that.
Right.
Because as you probably know, Sting likes the element of surprise. And this surprised him. So we kind of went in that direction. And of course, Sting loves weaving in and out of different keys and key shifts. And I love doing that too. So we kind of, and you're right, every section is its own kind of, has its own sort of identity in that piece.
Yeah.
And of course, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you remember, like, because also the tone that you had on that song is fantastic. Do you remember kind of like what guitar you were using?
Yeah, I do actually. I was using a Fernandez Strat.
Okay.
Kind of hybrid Fernandez Strat. In those days, I was all about Fernandez, and we're talking like 1990 when we recorded this. I would have been using EMG pickups, which were very very fashionable in those days. Very bright sounding pickups. And I went through like a normal kind of pedal board with a few gizmos here and there with a very good engineer, Hugh Padgham, who went through a preamp. I was using the Mesa Boogie Mark III amp. I don't know, it's just and that sort of 80s rock, chorusy rock sound, which I really liked, which was sort of fashionable in those days.
Yep.
And actually the whole album, I'm using that sort of sound. I don't know if I would do that now.
Right.
But, and also the EMG pickups played a big part in the brightness of the guitar sound. But now we compensate with different amp settings and everything. Now I'm more about playing a traditional 61 Strat with all its inconsistencies.
For sure.
Which I actually enjoy.
Yeah. And I guess you can answer this about the Soul Cages or really any of Sting's songs, but like, for example, on this record here, 10 Sumner's Tales, you co-wrote Shape of My Heart.
Yeah.
And you've gotten the co-writing nod a few times, but like on a song like Soul Cages that's like it's just credited to Sting, does he come in with like, he knows what he wants with the guitar, or it's kind of you work it out in the studio?
No, he leaves me to my own devices, and especially on this album, because he didn't really know me then.
Right.
So he was trying to discover who this new musician was in his band. So I had complete carte blanche, free reign to kind of come up with whatever I wanted. And it's actually through that album that I kind of found my own electric guitar voice. Sort of it just found itself. And so no, he didn't tell me what to play. He came in with a lyric and a structure, like a loose structure. And as soon as he heard what I was doing, well, then it became more of a collaborative effort, you know. But with songwriting credit, usually the way that works is if somebody comes in with an idea, as with Shape of My Heart, that was me coming in with a guitar motif, well then of course it's going to be a co-write. But if somebody comes up to me, like with Phil Collins on Another Day in Paradise, and has a loose chord structure which inspires me to come up with something, I can't really take credit for writing, because my job is to
add to it.
Is to make the song sound better.
Yeah.
So I'm inspired by the initial idea. And that's how songwriting works. Actually, nowadays, in modern times, the songwriting credit process is quite different, because you will often see that a song is written by more than 6 or 8 people.
Yeah.
Whoever was in the studio at the time somehow has got credit for it. But back in those days, it was much more like usually one person writing a complete song, or occasionally, if my contribution would have been more than just a riff, then I would have been put in on the publishing. But I don't necessarily feel that I need to take writing credit on that song, because I was inspired by his initial idea.